here it is, the X-Treme Dubber, a dubbing brush winding tool that's powered by your battery-operated drill. On this particular one, the drill's a little tall, so I put a piece of 1x4 underneath it here to shim it up. That made my height even for my solid shafts here. These gigantic brushes, this is an 8-inch wide brush, is made with 3 or 4 really simple materials. You can use any kind of hair you want to, but what I found is that plain old 70 denier fish hair seems to work the best. It has the right amount of movement and the right amount of stiffness in it. If I use the 50 denier hair, it tends to be a little soft. I use that on my 4 to 6 inch wide brushes, but my 6, 8, 10, and even 12 inch wide brushes, I'll use the 70 denier hair. It works better. You can use crinkled hair, but the crinkle in the hair will hold more water in the fly as you pick it out of the water. And I'm trying to make the flies as light as possible, so I don't use that hair as much on the big brushes. On the smaller brushes, you can get away with using Supreme hair, super hair, or any number of other types of materials. The other thing I'll use is the DNA Frosty Fish Fiber. This is also a really great material. There's nothing else like it to add a real depth to the fly, a real 3D look to the fly. I can't get that from any other material like I can from the Frosty Fish Fiber. The last thing I'll add is angel hair. And whether it's angel hair or wing and flash or ice wing fiber or a number of other stuff, it's all angel hair. It's all the same stuff. So as long as it's a real light flash, I can put that in. And as you can see, the flash tends to migrate right down to the center of the brush. And it really does a great job of getting right into the middle of that brush and giving me that more of a 3D look than what I'll get out of just putting Flashaboo or Crystal Flash. A really strong, durable brush. I also use some plain old dubbing wax. It doesn't have to be high-tack wax, just regular old dubbing wax works just fine for the wire. For the wire, I like the Hairline or the Spirit River 5/1000 diameter wire. The Big Fly uni wire is 9/1000 of an inch. It spins up real nice, but it's a little bulky on the fly. It tends to make the fly just a little bit larger in diameter than what I want it to. And since I'm trying to keep the fly light, I'd rather use a wire that's almost half the diameter and still real strong. Slip it over the top of my hook and just spin that up to start. I'll take my wire down. I'll put it over the top of my hook on this end, and this is spring loaded, so I'm going to load that just a little bit and just wrap the wire over the top of itself. Then I'll take the excess on the spool and I'll put that up here on our thread holder, like so. The table adjusts up and down, so I can adjust to the size of the brush that I'm making. I'll start out by just putting some wax on my wire. And again, I don't have to make it real built up heavy or anything, I just want a little stick on there. I'll bring my table up and I'll set my table so it's just below where I'm going to build the brush. Now I'm ready to start laying on my hair. I'm going to start out with a black base. I'm going to take a hunk of hair that's a little less than 1/4 of an inch in diameter. Trim that right off of my hank of hair. Now just start and lay this out across the table. Now, I'm not trying to make it perfect. I just want to lay it out so that I've got a pretty decent base going on, and I'll come back over the top of this a couple of times with this. You really need about 5 or 6 layers of hair in order to get the bulk that you desire out of the fly. Any more than that, you're just wasting hair. Any less than that, and your brush really gets a little too thin and doesn't give you the size, dimension that you're looking for. You'll end up using more of the brush. I can usually get about 2 flies out of one of these 12-inch long brushes. There's my first layer. Come in with my next layer, my chartreuse. I use about half as much as I did. So this is maybe 1/8 of an inch in diameter, just a little bit more than that. You'll have to do a little experimenting to find out just exactly what works the best for you. Usually when I come in and I'm going to do several different colors, I'll make a little bit of space in between. So I can come back in and I can fill in with my other shade. Trying to maintain some consistency, but again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'll come back through with my yellow chartreuse, about the same amount, about another 1/8 inch pinch here. And you can see I've got lots of flies that I can tie off of one hank of this, lots of brushes. I'll bring the yellow chartreuse in and I'll fill in those spots that are a lot wider, and try to get your colors much more consistent. Now I'm going to come back with some insect green in even a smaller amount, about half of what I've been using on the 2 other fluorescents. Flash. I'll start with my chartreuse. And I don't have to make this super heavy. I want to be fairly even with the amounts of flash that I have from one end of the brush to the other. I add a little gold. And then I'll come in and I'll highlight it with just a little bit of black. There we go. Now I'm going to come in with my frosty fish fiber and I'm going to do the same thing. This is what's really going to add that 3D dimension. And I'm using a real small bunch here, maybe a 1/16 of an inch or so. And I don't have to put a fiber everywhere. This is just laying right on top of my flash. Come in with some chartreuse, about the same amount. You can really see how that color's starting to really pop now. Now I'll come back through and I'm going to put on a heavier layer of my black so that I can bring the black out in this fly more. So I'm going to use about another 1/4 inch hunk of this hair, real healthy amount of the 70 denier fish hair. I'm going to make sure I get real good coverage with this. There we go. That looks pretty good. Now we're starting to get some real good consistency in the color of the brush here. I've got good coverage. Now the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come through and I'm going to just trim these ends. And depending on whether I want a tapered brush or whether I want a brush that's all the same length, depends on how I cut the ends here. If I want it tapered, then I'm going to start here and make it longer. And I don't have to have it perfect, I'm just trying to get close enough here. Spinning up the brush, I'll grab my dubbing wax again. Put some wax on my wire. Place the wire over. Give this a couple of quick twists here. And we'll trim that wire off nice and short. Put that back up in my thread holder. Now, if I just drop the tray out of here, I really don't have enough room to spin that brush. So what we've done with this dubbing brush machine is I've come in and I've mortised this out. So all I have to do is just lift my table completely out. Now I've got more than enough room to do even a 12-inch brush I could do on here. I'll start with spinning this up, and this end will spin tighter than this end will. When this end starts to spin down here, that'll hold my hair in place fairly well. Now I'll come back, grab my bodkin from the holder up here, and I'll start to straighten my hair out a little bit just to get more consistency in my wind. You're never going to get it perfect, and you don't. What I really look for is the consistency that I can make these with. That's the big advantage of using the drill, is that your consistency. We're good and tight on here now. The material is real good. So I'll put my bodkin back in the holder. I'll grab my wire brush. I'm just going to brush this out a little bit. There we have it. Consistent, very flexible, easy to use, big dubbing brush.